The book that I chose to do my book report on was Life on a Plate by GreggWallace. This book was his autobiography, and he published it in 2012. Um, this book mostly talked about his childhood and his early teenage years before the start of his career. He did talk about his career in here. His parents did have some troubled times. The mom wanted to get a divorce because the dad was having an affair, but she was told to stay because they both made vows to each other that they would stay together. And they had three sons: Biffo, and Adam. Biffo is actually Greg's half brother because the mom had an affair as well and got pregnant with Biffo. And Adam, the third son, is actually Greg's full brother. So Greg has one half brother and one full brother. Greg did have a good relationship with his grandparents because they all lived together, and Greg would hang out with them every weekend, and they would watch shows together and eat together, and they had a really strong bond. And he talked about the bond that he had with his grandmother in this book, and it was really, really sweet. Kind of reminded me of like my bond with my grandmother. Going into his career, let me see. It briefly talked about this catering supply business that he worked with, but he also got into trouble with the law. He said he was sacked for stealing from this company that he worked for, and he was truthful about it, and he decided to leave just to benefit them. And the second time he got in trouble with the law was for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was arrested, but he was let go because they realized that he was not a part of the case at all. And the other time he got arrested was for giving away his license plate number. So he was arrested and he had to go to court, and he ended up defending himself because he couldn't afford to have a lawyer to defend his case, and he eventually won it and was let go. He eventually started his career in the Covent Garden fruit and veg market, and he worked for them for a while. And he eventually opened up his own company that he called George Allen Greengrocers, and it eventually is worth up to 7.5 million Europe dollars. And he still has this business today, and his brother Biffo, his half brother Biffo, it shows pictures of those two together. Here you go. They've been working together for 20 years, from the fruit and vegetable market to the restaurants that he's opened. After that boosted, he was offered an interview with Chef Magazine, and he was offered TV shows and a radio show on Radio 4 in London. Those were really a big hit, but his business partner, I believe his name was Paul, he couldn't take it because it was too much, so he left, and a lot of those dwindled down. And then he started working for BBC, and he was asked to co-host MasterChef, and that's how I know GreggWallace is through MasterChef. He co-hosted MasterChef, Celebrity MasterChef, and MasterChef The Professionals, and that's where I've known to enjoy him, because he's the guy who likes pudding. he mentions it in this book that if you gave him pudding to taste, you'd get extra brownie points because he loves pudding. And just a few things about him. His first marriage lasted 6 weeks. He called it, where is it? It's this picture. He said possibly the shortest marriage in America, which was 6 weeks. He was married again to I forget her name, but they had 2 children together, a son and a daughter. They got divorced. He got married again, and this was his 3rd marriage. They got a divorce recently. They were only married for 14 months, and now I researched online to see if he was in a relationship again. He's actually engaged with his soon-to-be 4th wife. So it should be different. It should be interesting. But this was basically about his childhood, and what I found interesting about this book was that the chapters that he wrote in the table of contents is ingredients or dishes that he loved as a child. So that's what I liked about it. Other than that, that's mainly about Greg Wallace, and I definitely recommend that you should read this book in the future. Thanks.